Let's move now to a matter that occurred over 5 years ago but is yet to be fully resolved. Abuse, neglect, starvation. The inquest into the Life Esidemeni tragedy, in which 144 people lost their lives, got underway today. The inquest aims to establish if anyone should be criminally charged for the deaths of the psychiatric patients. ETV reporter Riante Naidoo has been following the proceedings today. Let's cross to her for the latest. Riante, this is just such a tragic and awful situation. We know that, of course, there has been an arbitration process. We've seen some family members receive compensation. But to this day, we haven't seen criminal charges. And that's what this inquest is all about. So talk to me about what happened on day one.
Absolutely, Sally. Well, this morning, senior counsel for all involved, that being the National Prosecuting Authority, the government, Section 27 as well, who are representing the bereaved families, all were given an opportunity to obviously make opening statements. And many of them obviously recapped what many of us had heard during those arbitration proceedings, which happened between 2017 and 2018. I mean, we can recall the most horrific events and incidents that occurred when it came to just over 1,000 mental health patients who were moved from Life Esidemeni, and this decision was taken in 2015 by the Gauteng Health Department, and between 2015 and 2016 they were moved to what we now know were extremely, ill-equipped facilities to deal with patients, who have mental health issues. They needed very specific type of care, Sally, and they did not get this. Sadly and very tragically, as a result, 144 of those patients died, and those people's families now want justice out of this inquest. So while an inquest is, simply an investigation that will put the facts before the court of the events that obviously transpired and led to the deaths of the 144 patients, it can result in criminal charges. So that's not going to be ruled out. So the families are really hopeful that obviously government officials and those at NGOs who some had fraudulent licenses and took on their loved ones, these families hope they will find such individuals criminally liable for their actions.
All right, so I'm wondering about the witnesses and the people that are going to be called to this inquest. I suppose is former health MEC for Gauteng, Mahlangu, among those who are due to be called? And then also tell me about who spoke today.
Well, Sally, clearly, she's obviously being represented, so it's highly likely that, yes, she will be testifying. An explicit witness list has not been, made available to us just yet as the media. But let's talk about today's witness. It was Cassie Chambers from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and very, very interesting, tragic and horrific details were given by Chambers today. The reason why, her group firstly was even approached was because families of Life Esidemeni patients reached out to them for emotional support and other types of support because they couldn't get access to their family members once they were moved to these facilities. But Sal, just some of the things she mentioned before Judge Tefo today was the abuse, the starvation, the fact that, patients were relapsing, they were having seizures. Just a quote from her, she says that these patients should have never died under these circumstances. The circumstances being simply moved from one facility to another, but we can understand that obviously they were moved to ill-equipped facilities and that people do need to be held liable. Let's actually just listen to a bite, Sally. She's basically speaking about the conditions that family members said they found their loved ones in.
I think initially when we thought that the patients were being moved, they shouldn't have died from just moving to a different facility. As we were getting more and more reports from the families and the cases and the photos of neglect, abuse and starvation, then we were getting really concerned, and these growing concerns were documented as we saw photos of patients with wounds and being starved. And then our concerns were a lot more heightened. And then we actually saw more of these cases where patients ended up in hospital or getting sick with pneumonia or relapsing. And that's when our dire urgent concerns were even further felt. And that's when we would raise these serious issues where these patients might demise at that stage.
Well, I can see, Riante, we're going to have to relive some of these heartbreaking stories of what happened to these very vulnerable patients. And let us hope that there will be criminal charges coming out of this inquest so that someone actually answers to make sure it never happens again. Thank you so much for wrapping day one of the inquest into the Life Esidemeni tragedy. That was Riante Naidoo there. We've got